at least 400 years ago, baptism ceremony. So the relation between the word John and the meaning complex is set up by the intention or desire of the particular person. So it refers to John because of the intention of his father, and the subsequent user of this name should use the word John to refer to the same in John individuals. If the relation remains the same, then the referent of John would also remain the same. But in the case of the word cow, the relation has been set up by the intention of God. This is another way of saying that the origin of this baptism ceremony is not known. But in both cases, the meaning relation is set up by the intention of the name giver. So I am trying to point out the difference between cow and John. So the Naiyāyika emphasizes the conventional relation between an expression and what is referred to by that expression. In this respect, we find a striking similarity between the view of the Naiyāyika and that of Kripke. Both of them emphasize the initial baptism and the intention of the name giver. So, two things are involved in both the cases. One is initial baptism and the intention of the name giver. Now I am criticizing certain objections can be raised against this view of the Nabbur Naiyāyika, against this view. First of all, this view ignores the distinction between a general term and a proper name. Hence, it fails to explain the difference between the relation which holds among the referents of a general term such as cow on the one hand and the relation which holds among the referents of a proper name such as John on the other. The different referents of the word cow are not dependent on each other in the way the referents of the word John are dependent on each other. That means in the case of John, there is a sequence: John of boyhood, John of adulthood, John of old age. But in the case of the word cow, there is no sequence. The cow of Honolulu is not dependent on the cow of New Zealand or India. Is it clear to everybody?
Yes,
So,
sir.
in one case, sequence is involved. In another case, there is no sequence. And what is sequence? Ordered n-tuple is called sequence. Ordered n-tuple. N is number of stages mentioned. In this case, John of boyhood, John of adulthood, John of old age, 3 N are mentioned. N-tuple means ordered, or there is an order. First, second, third. You cannot change the order. But in the case of general term, there is no such thing as sequence. The referents of the word John are different John individuals, such as John of boyhood, John of adulthood, and John of old age. The John of adulthood is dependent on the John of boyhood, and the John of old age is dependent on the John of adulthood. But a cow in Honolulu is not dependent on a cow in California in the same way. Hence, the relation between the boy John and the adult John is not the same as the relation between two particular cows. In the former case, the concept of sequence is present, but not in the latter case. This distinction cannot be explained if a proper name is assimilated to a general term. So this is the first criticism. And some of you raised this criticism last time. That in one case sequence is involved. Sequence is n tuple. Yes.
Ordered in
Order.
tuple.
That's right. That means first, second, third. Second will be after first, and third will be after second. So some sort of dependence is involved. But in the case of general term, there is no such dependence. Secondly, this view of the Nobunai cannot avoid the problem of proper names by treating ordinary proper names as general terms. It simply pushes the problem one step further. Since according to the Naiyāyika, everything is nameable. You know, I wrote a paper long time ago. Everything is nameable. Everything exists, is nameable and knowable. These are the three terms denote everything. But knowability and nameability are dispositional terms. That was my aim to point out. And I have quoted many passages from the Naiyāyika philosophers. Since according to Naiyāyika, everything is nameable, we can name each of the members of the John individual series. Instead of giving one name to a series, we can give a separate name to each of the members of this series. If these names are also treated as general terms, then this view will lead us to an infinite regress and it becomes indefensible. Infinite regress, I am pointing out. John of boyhood. You can name John of boyhood by giving a name. Let us say number 1. And you can divide John of boyhood into several segments. Then each of the segments, John of boyhood, like John of 1 year old, John of 2nd year old, John of 3rd year old. Sequence is involved, and you can name those sequences also by giving another name. In this way, it continues. So it will lead you to infinite regress. 1 year old, you can name again. 12 months old, you can name again. Each month old, first month, second month, up to 12 months old, you can name again. Then you can name the days again.
Yes.
You can name
weeks,
the
months, yes.
The hours again.
Hours
In this
again.
way, it goes on. infinite regress. So these two criticisms. Third one of the consequences of this view is that we have to accept one class character corresponding to each proper name. This will go against the law of parsimony, which is so widely used in the Nyaya literature. That means corresponding to each name, proper name, we have to postulate a jati. Like Gotra jati is one, you have to postulate corresponding to each name. This will go against the law of parsimony. Moreover, we have to admit the being of these class characters even before the reference of proper names come into being. For these reasons, some of the followers of the Naiyāyika do not consider proper names as general terms. So, I have raised virtually 4 criticisms. One is that corresponding to each proper name, you have to postulate jati. And secondly, that jati is eternal. So before John is born, there is a jati called Johnhood. So before I was born, there will be jati of Jehud. So there will be, the universe will be populated with so many jatis. For these reasons, some of the followers of the Naiyāyika do not consider proper names as general terms. The second view of Naiyāyika does not treat proper names as general terms. Rather, it considers proper names as names for particular objects or persons. According to this view, the meaning complex of a proper name such as John would include John, individual John, the property of being John, tad vyaktitva. I have translated tad vyaktitva as the property of being. If I mention John, then the property of being John will be tad vyaktitva, and the relation of the latter to the former. The property of being John would be the mode of presentation of John, and hence it would be the limiter of the property of the referent of John, Shakkata, which resides in John. So you can ask the question now, what is the property of being John? But property of being John will be the mode of presentation of John. Like Gotto is the mode of presentation of all the cows. Secondly, how they are related. In the case of cowness, which is the mode of presentation of the cows, cowness is related to particular cows by the relation of inherence. Here, the property of being John would be the mode of presentation of John, and hence it would be the limiter of the property of being the referent, Shakkata, which resides in John. The meaning complex may be represented in the following way. John means John, then R the relation of being John. Lambda operator, John is identical with X. That means this is called lambda operator. It is a lambda conversion, is another dimension of formal logic. So this operator makes a property out of individual. This is the function of lambda operator. And Church has used a lot, lambda conversion, it is called. In any case, intuitively, or you can understand without knowing what lambda operator is, you can read it as being John. John, then another term is being John, which is the mode of presentation of John, and the relation of being John to John, that is R. The third member of this ordered triple is the qualifier, Visheshana, which qualifies the first member, which is the qualificand. And the R is the relation of qualifier to the qualificand, which is a self-linking Sarupa relation in this context. Naya has accepted a lot of Sarupa relation. All right. So this is a Sarupa relation. That means in the case of Sarupa relation, the relation is not a separate entity. It is to be identified with a term. So in this case, Sarupa relation will identify a term being John. Sarupa relation will identify R with John. The relation is not a separate entity. Relation is to be identified with a term. So in this case, Sarupa relation R is not inherence relation. In the case of cowness, how it is related to individual cows, the relation is inherent. But in this case, yes, in this case, it will not be inherence, it will be
Sarupa Sambandha.
Self-linking.
Sarupa relation. That means it's to be identified with John.
Sir, I have a question here. Can we say that this self-linking relation is the relation of identity, or there is a slight difference between the two?
It is not a separate entity. It is to be identified with John.
So means, sir, Swarupa Sambandh is equal to Tadatma Sambandh. Can we say so?
No, Tadatma Sambandh is different.
Yeah. So the relation of identity and self-linking relation.
We are coming to Tadatma relation also.
Okay,
so,
okay.
Sarupa Sambandha is not Tadatma.
Mm-hmm.
Tadatma is different relation. That is also, according to some, is a Sarupa relation.
Yep.
Type of Tadatma Sambandha is a Sarupa relation, but
not the vice versa. Not the way around.
That's right.
Yes, sir.
That's right.
Okay, sir. Okay, got it. Thank you, sir.
So,
Sir, going back to the lambda operator makes a property of an individual. Is that the definition?
Yes, it is a property making symbol. It is a property making symbol.
So lambda x means John equal to x means that John equal to being John. This
Being John.
being John, which is the property.
Reading is being John.
Which is the property, and the relation therefore becomes Swarupa.
That's right. That's right. And the R is to be identified with John. It is not a separate entity ontologically. As regards the nature of the property of being John, it is said that it cannot be identified with any property expressible by a definite description, such as the son of Tom. So it cannot be identified with any description. Moreover, it cannot be identified with a conjunction or disjunction of properties of John. It is considered as a necessary and unique property of John. Now the question is what this property could be, since it is not considered as something distinct from all 7 categories of the Naiyāyika, Naiyāyika, it is to be identified with some category or the other. Jagadisha claimed that the property of being John is the John, individual John itself, as the second term of the relation of identity, whose first term is also John. Now, Jagadisha claimed Tadatma Sambandhabachinna John. When we say John has the property of being John, Jagadisha means that John is John, John as being the second member of the identity is to be identified with
John, the first
being
one.
John. So he introduces Tadatma Sambandha Vachinna John. That means being John is nothing but Tadatma Sambandha Vachinna John. Now I am pointing out some problems. So Jagadisha claimed that the property of being John is the John individual John itself as the second term of the relation of identity, whose first term is also John. That means John is John. According to Naiyāyika, every object has its own relation of identity. It is not like Western philosophy. Identity is something common to all objects. If you go back to Aristotle, then there are 3 laws. Laws of identity, laws of
Excluded middle.
contradiction, and law of excluded middle. John, A is A. A cannot be
not A.
Not A. And A is either A or
not A.
Not A.
Both cannot be true together.
That's right. Now here, identity is a relation of each individual. It is not a generic relation. in the Nyaya.
Mm.
These things are not present in the Nyaya literature, but I discussed with my Guruji, and he mentioned that each object has its own identity. It is not a generic identity. But in Western logic, there is a generic identity. So the identity of this table is different from this chair is this chair. So everything has its own identity.
Mm.
So according to Nyaya, every object has its own relation of identity. There are many identity relations as there are objects in the Nyaya system. So each object has its own identity. It is not the same relation which relates an object to itself. The identity relation of John to himself is different from that of Tom to himself. So each object has its own identity. If a person such as John is related to himself by the relation of identity, then John is both the qualificand and the qualifier of this relation. So this is the problem. The property of being the qualifier resident in John is limited by the relation of identity. Tadatma sambandhavachinna John. So virtually, this view of Jagadisha claims that the same individual could be conceived both as qualificand and qualifier in such cases. So this will be the consequence of this view. If you include being John as Tadatma sambandhavachinna John, then this will be the consequences. So we need explanation of the word being John, which will be the mode of presentation of John. Okay? So one interpretation is Tadatma sambandhavachinna John is to be interpreted as being John. Even if this thesis of Jagadisha and his followers can be considered as the limiting case of the qualificand qualifier relation, it does not solve the problem of communicability of the meaning of a proper name. How do you communicate the meaning of a proper name? Because being John is the mode of presentation, and being John is to be interpreted as the second term of the relation of identity. So mode of presentation includes John himself. How can a hearer who is not acquainted with John understand the meaning of the word John? Like Russell's, acquaintance. Since the sense of the word John is explained in terms of John, a speaker or a hearer would not understand its meaning unless he is acquainted with John. So he will not understand the meaning of John unless he is acquainted with John. Moreover, since the property of being John which is the mode of presentation of John, is considered as the individual John itself as the second term of the relation of identity, is goes against the Nyaya thesis that there is a difference between an object and the mode in which it is presented to us. Mode of presentation is identical with the object itself. In the case of cowness is present in cows. Particular cows and cowness, they are different. But here, being John is to be interpreted in terms of John. So it will go against the Nyaya view that the mode of presentation is identical with the thing of which it is a mode of presentation. So there is no difference between them. Furthermore, if we admit that an object including a class character can be its own mode of presentation, then there is no need to admit any higher order abstract entities such as cow, ness, the property of being cowness, gottotto. Gotto is a property of particular cows, and gottotto, which is the mode of presentation of cowness. Since Nyaya has explained the property of being cowness as the property of being present in all and only cows by the relation of inherence, it cannot be explained in the way the property of being John has been explained. If it is claimed that the property of being cowness can be explained in either of the two ways, then one of them would be superfluous, unless we point out some specific reason for both of them. So I have raised objection against this view. And the third, this objection is very substantial in the sense that it erases the distinction between mode of presentation and the object of which it is a mode of presentation. And in the case of cowness, gavetarashati aneka go samavetattam. That means cowness, the mode of presentation of cowness is that it is related to all the cows and cows only by the relation of inherence. And if you claim that it can be either one or the other, then you have to give some reason. And one of them will be superfluous. All right, to everybody. So, three substantial objections I have raised. The third view of proper name is associated with Raghunatha Shiromani, a follower of the Nambunaya. The follower of the Nambunaya.
So the first one was Jayanta, second is Jagadish, and third is Raghunath, or in between as
Yes,
follows?
Raghunatha. First is Jayanta, then second one is Jagadisha, and then his interpretation of being John, and the third view is Raghunatha. His view differs from the second view in two important respects. Raghunatha claimed that the pravitti nimitta, the limiter of the property of being the referent of a term, is not part of the meaning complex of a term. You remember we talked about limiter, and Raghunatha claims that limiter is not part of the meaning complex. Hence, the meaning of a term such as John would be the referent, and the mode of presentation of the referent is something which indicates or suggests upalakshana, suggests the referent. You remember Vardhamana Upadhyay and Gadadhara and Raghunatha regarding we have discussed the pravitti nimitta of the term. Pravitti nimitta is the shakkata avachedaka.
Hmm.
So Raghunatha's conception of the mode of presentation of the referent corresponds to Kripke's conception of referential description. Which one is the house of Devadatta? Where the crows are sitting. And next moment, crows disappeared. You require to know the referential description. It has been used in several senses. Kripke says, Aristotle is the teacher of Alexander the Great. In another possible world, Aristotle is Aristotle, but he is not the teacher of Alexander the Great. So it is a referential definite description. Then who is John in a party? The person who is drinking champagne in his glass, and he is drinking water.
Yeah.
He is holding a glass, that is true, but not drinking champagne.
Hmm.
Third one is Raghunatha. Which one is the house of Devadatta? Where the crows are sitting. And you come to know the house of Devadatta. Although it is a contingent property, crows disappear next moment. Then you can sit here and your wife can sit there. She is not his wife, but you come to know who has been referred to.
Refer to.
According to my Panditji, all of them are upalakshan. The crow's contingent property disappeared, and your wife can sit there. She is not my wife, but you come to know who has been referred to. It is false of the object, not true of, or partially true of, not even a contingent property. So, Raghunatha is close to Kripke. So, Raghunatha's conception of the mode of presentation of the referent corresponds to Kripke's conception of referential description. It is a device for fixing the referent or the referents of a term. In the case of a proper name, such as John, the mode of presentation of John is the property of being John. Tad Bhakti. This property is something which fixes the referent of John, and it does not form part of the meaning complex of the name John. According to Raghunatha, Tadvyaktitva of John, Tadvyaktitva of John does not form the meaning. It is not a part of the meaning complex of John. As regards the nature of the property of being John, Raghunatha claimed that it cannot be identified either with John or with any other category of the Naiyāyika system. The property of being John is a separate, irreducible category by itself. This is another view. Property of being John, which is the mode of presentation, is not part of the meaning complex. Then what it is? He is not interpreting in terms of identity, tadatma sambandhavachinna John, but he is interpreting in terms of a separate category. So he postulates innumerable categories, not the 7 categories of the Naiyāyika system, but innumerable categories. And all of you can read Padartha Tattva Nirupanam of Raghunatha ceremony. There is a Bengali and Sanskrit commentary by Madhusudan Naiyācharya, with whom I studied a few months also. He is a great scholar, and he wrote a commentary on Raghunatha also. And if you cannot know Bengali or Sanskrit, then you can read also Professor Potter's thesis. His thesis was on Raghunatha ceremony. He has translated, and you can have a copy of that book also, either in your library or you can borrow from some other library and Xerox it. Potter, Karl Potter.
Sir, how this view of sir, how this view of having
Raghunatha,
many categories is better than or
that's
compared
right.
to the
Similarly,
many jatis of Jagadish?
yes, Now, Jagadisha postulates jati corresponding to each proper name. And his interpretation of being John is Tadatma Sambandhavachinna John. But Raghunatha postulates being John as a separate category, not to be identified with the number of 7 categories postulated by Naiyāyika system. Similarly, he postulates in the case of properties, qualities, numbers. You remember the number? Raghunatha postulates separate categories for counting the number of qualities. There are 4 qualities here in this room. There are 6 tests. 6 tests. So he claims that number can be used as a property of the gunas. So he claims that Nyaya system is not to be categorized in terms of 7 categories. So he remains a heretic. Heretic called also young Turk. Young Turk is also another name of heretics. He remains a heretic. He does not subscribe to the categories of the Naiyāyika system.
So Raghunath, sir, postulates these categories as irreducibles. But in Naiyāyika systems also there are
he
some
is not in
reducible
favor of
categories.
reduction.
So Raghunath is not in favor of reduction,
In
but
the
many
case of
other Naiyayikas.
now, Raghunatha is not
in the favor of reducible categories, right?
That's right.
He has
There are
postulated
many irreducible categories.
Separate irreducible categories.
Irreducible categories. Similarly, Vishayata, Vishayita are separate categories in Raghunatha. Vishayata, how I have interpreted the relation of cognition to the object is Vishayata. And Vishayita, the converse relation, the relation of object to cognition. But Raghunatha accepted all these categories. They are irreducible. So the merit of this view is that it does not identify the property of being John with John. In spite of this merit, this view is not acceptable to most of the followers of Navya. It is claimed that this view violates the law of parsimony and postulates the Nyaya ontology with a number of irreducible entities. So we are landed with 2 extreme views. One of them equates the property of being John with John individual as the second member of the relation of identity. And the other one considers it as an irreducible entity. In the midst of this controversy, I would like to suggest a mean between the 2 extremes without going against the Nyaya, against any fundamental thesis of the Nyaya. It seems to me that this view can be developed within the Nyaya system. It is my view.
Yeah.
Number fourth one. According to this view, the property of being John, which is the reason or the ground for applying the term John to the John individual, is not a separate category or entity. It is a function of the uniquenesses of the parts of John. I am claiming that there is a way out. We come across two extreme views. One of them is Jagadisha's view that being John is to be interpreted in terms of identity. And another view is that being John is a separate category according to Raghunatha. I am claiming that being John is a uniqueness which is due to particular parts of the John. And you go back to Antabhishesha. Each atom in the Nyaya system has its uniqueness, Antabhishesha, which differentiates atoms from other things. And it distinguishes itself from everything. You know, Vishesha is a category. So according to Nyaya, any created object such as a table, a city, the body of a person is ultimately reducible to a set of ultimate atoms, each of which is characterized by an ultimate differentia, Antabhishesha. But according to Raghunatha, this process of reduction should terminate at Tranuka, which is the minutest visible particle consisting of 3 dyadic atoms. That is the problem. He claims Tranuka is something which is the terminating point, but classical Nyaya says that atoms are the classical terminating point. The differentia of an ultimate substance, according to the Nyaya, is a separate ontological category, differentia, Vishesha. An ultimate differentia differentiates an ultimate substance and it differentiates itself from all other objects. So the differentia of an atom distinguishes that atom from all other atoms, and it distinguishes itself from everything else. The objects which consist of atoms or ultimate entities are determined by the uniquenesses of their respective parts. That is to say, the uniqueness of a whole can be explained in terms of the uniquenesses of its parts. Since the Nyaya has admitted ultimate differentia of the irreducible parts, there is no need to assign a separate uniqueness to each of the constructed or created objects. The uniqueness of the whole is a function of the uniquenesses of its parts. You have to know the word function. Set theory interprets function as a relation. Relation of many to one, the relation of many to many, the relation of one to one, the relation of one to many.
Many.
This is called set theoretic conception of function. Now I am introducing, let us say, John has how many parts? Let us consider that John has 10 parts. Each part has uniqueness. So the uniqueness of John is to be explained in terms of many one relation. That means 10 objects, 10 parts, each part has a uniqueness.
Sunil ji, please mute yourself.
Now,
Muted.
anybody would like to raise a question?
No, sir. Somebody's mic was unintentionally unmuted, so it's now done.
Okay, so somebody was, whether anybody wanted to raise a question, you can raise. So what my aim is that the uniqueness of the ultimate parts of the body will explain the uniqueness of the whole. So if we have 10 parts of John, then the uniqueness of John is a function. Uniqueness of the John is a many one relation. That means the uniqueness of John is derived from the uniquenesses of its parts. Similarly, each part has got components, and the uniqueness of each part will be derived from the uniquenesses of its component. In this way, you go back to atoms, which have uniquenesses called antabishesha. Each atom has its own antabishesha, ultimate differentia. So, ultimate differentia has been postulated by the Nyaya philosophers to distinguish each atom from the rest. And Andabhishesha also distinguishes itself from others. So it is a many one relation. So uniqueness of John is to be identified with being John. So being John, one is Taratma Sambandhavachinna John, another is Raghunatha's view that it is a separate category, and I am suggesting in between the two extremes. What is that? That it is a function of many one relation.
So, sir,
So
you are in
ultimately,
between Raghunath and Jagdisha, right, sir? Your view is in the
Jagadisha and Raghunatha.
and Raghunath.
Jagadisha and Raghunatha, two extreme views. And
Yeah.
then I am suggesting another view, avoiding two extremes. That being John is the uniqueness, of John, which is related to many parts of the uniquenesses of John.
Hmm.
So the uniqueness of John is to be explained in terms of the uniquenesses of the parts of John. And the uniquenesses of the parts of John are or uniquenesses of the parts of John are to be explained in terms of the uniquenesses of those parts. In this way, you go back to ultimate differentia. So by postulating ultimate differentia, you can explain the uniqueness of John. Is it clear to all of us? So being John is uniqueness of John. As
Sir, I want to ask one question.
Anta Vishesha distinguishes the atom from all other objects, and it distinguishes itself from everything else. Similarly, the uniqueness of John is something which distinguishes John from everything else.
Sir, may I ask something here?
Sure, you can ask questions.
Sir, like regarding proper name, if we are applying this uniqueness conception of yours, which is in between the
I
Raghunathan
can't hear properly.
Am I not? Hello, sir.
Little louder and
means
slower.
it is an ultimate category. Being John is an ultimate category. And
Sir, I would
Jagadisha explains being John is Tadatma Sambandhavachinna John. That means it is the second term of the identity relation.
Yes, sir. I wanted to ask, sir, that it is happening when we are referring to a proper name, right? Sir, what if we are taking the same conception regarding the uniqueness of two people or two individuals, like Judy and Trudy? That example you have taken once and you described it. So how
That's right.
to the Antya Vishes there, this is the same conception being applied over there as well, which is being applied here on proper name?
That's right. Judy has got its uniqueness and Trudy got her uniqueness. Now, the uniqueness of Judy is to be explained in terms of the uniquenesses of Judy's parts. And similarly, the uniqueness of Trudy is to be explained in terms of the uniquenesses of her parts.
Trudy's parts, right.
That's right. And Naya has claimed that there is Anta Vishesha. Anta Vishesha means ultimate
Differential.
ultimate differentia. And
Right.
what ultimate differentia does? It distinguishes that object from all other objects, and it distinguishes itself from all other objects. So
Right.
here I am postulating, since Naya has postulated uniqueness, Anta Vishesha, ultimate differentia. So I am using ultimate differentia as something which can explain the uniqueness of the constructed objects or the objects which are created. Atoms are not created, but all other objects are created. So there is a mechanism to explain that one in terms of many-one relation. It is a function, the uniqueness of John is a function of the uniquenesses of its parts. So I am using a set theoretic concept called function. Many-one function is called a relation. So I am
Sir,
explaining here
sir, in
the
case of
uniqueness,
from set
the
theory,
uniqueness of the whole is a function of the uniquenesses of its parts. Now the question is how the term function is to be understood in this context. It might be suggested that as in Frege, the sense determines the referent of a term. So in the case of uniquenesses of the parts determine the whole or the referent of a term. For example, the city of Honolulu is determined by the uniquenesses of its parts, which are nothing but different areas of the city. These parts are in turn determined by the uniquenesses of their parts. And this process goes on until we arrive at the irreducible parts of a system. So each system has got some irreducible parts. So the uniqueness of irreducible parts will explain the uniqueness of the whole. If the irreducible parts are visible objects, then each minutest visible object has uniqueness. And the objects which are constructed out of such irreducible parts are determined by their uniquenesses. Another way of describing this situation is to consider a function as a many-one relation. This is also an explanation of the concept of determination. The uniquenesses of the parts are in the domain of this many-one relation, and the objects such as Honolulu or the body of a person such as John is in the counter domain of this relation. Domain and counter domain. In set theory, they call it. So in the domain, many uniquenesses are there. And in the counter domain, one uniqueness is there. So in this way, we can explain the uniqueness of John individual or the uniqueness of Trudy and Judy. So every object has its uniqueness. And Naiyāyika postulates ultimate uniqueness, antabishesha. So I am utilizing their concept of antabishesha, ultimate differentia, to explain the uniqueness of John, which is nothing but being John. Is it clear to everybody?
Yes, sir.
So I am not subscribing to Jagadish's view, to Raghunatha's view, because one makes being John as the second term of the identity relation. That means Vishesha and Visheshana become identical, which will go against the Nyaya conception. And Raghunatha's view claims that there are many irreducible entities in the Nyaya system. All right, to everybody, any question?
That the notion of
No,
Antabhishesha should be taken as an axiom, means that axiom of the system.
Which one?
The notion of Antabhishesha, according to your formulation or Nyaya formulation, is taken as an axiom, that it's an axiom of
Yes.
the system.
It is something axiomatic taken by the Nyaya system, how to distinguish one atom from another.
And in case of Raghunatha, there is an empirical element that he is empirically taking picking up a Tranuka.
That's right.
And
He is postulating, several categories.
sir, now without mentioning Raghunatha, Jagdish, or Jayant or anyone, if we ask what Professor Shah has to conclude as proper names or something like that, so how you will summarize your entire postulation here, sir? Just yours, without comparing with others.
Yeah, that's the name John refers to John, but there is being John as the mode of presentation of John, and that uniqueness, unique property of John, it refers to some unique property of John. And that unique property of John is to be explained ultimately in terms of the uniquenesses of the parts of John.
Okay, so
in this way, we will arrive at the ultimate differentia, which will distinguish the ultimate parts of John from other objects.
Any other object, right?
Right.
Wonderfully explained, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Thanks.
So I am trying to add something new to this concept.
This is Nabba.
Yep.
Yes. Yes, you can call it Nobbo Nobbonaya. And I am trying also to point out that Frege's elements are present in Nobbonaya, as well as Kripke's elements are also present in Nobbonaya. So we cannot claim that one is false, another is true. Rather, I am combining both Frege and Kripke in Nobbonaya. So, conflict between description theory of Frege and the historical or causal theory of Kripke are to be reconciled. And many philosophers have said in Nobbonaya that when a child is born, there is a name-giving ceremony. And it is similar to Kripke's conception of naming ceremony.
Baptism concept.
That's right. And the intention of the speaker is to be followed by subsequent user of the name. Even if they cannot be acquainted with the object, but their intention is to refer to that object which was initially baptized. So, Kripke has what Kripke has been said long time ago, and what Frege has been said long time ago. Avachedaka conception and mode of presentation. I am interpreting as mode of presentation. And I pointed out that Frege has used sense in 6 different senses. And I have taken some of the senses of Frege's sense. One is mode of presentation. And I have interpreted Avachedaka as a mode of presentation.
Sir, I have to read it again. I'm struggling a little, which I'm communicating to you and others is that, as usual, from an outsider, relating the atomic theory that you just explained that to us with scientific atomic theories, not in plural. Fundamental particles.
You can call about ultimate parts. In science also, we accept ultimate parts. So, ultimate parts, how do you distinguish ultimate parts from each other or one another? By some antabishesha.
By postulating uniqueness or ultimate differentiator.
That's right, uniqueness in those atoms. Yeah, ultimate parts. So, atomic theory need not be atomic theory. It could be any theory which postulates ultimate parts.
Yes, sir, in that sense only. But I was thinking of that. How do you differentiate between 2 electrons or leptons, whatever you call it? So,
yes,
electrons.
Should we take, Naya would say that each electron has antabishesha, so that we can distinguish ultimate one electron from another. Because you have to distinguish. If there are many objects, ultimate objects, you have to distinguish one from another. How do we do that? Naya claims we postulate antabishesha. So the remaining, I will read out the remaining portion, and you can ask questions from any portion of this paper. That will be our concluding session.
Thank you, sir. I was going to ask that.
And that one will be our concluding session. And I can't, Tirna has joined.
Today, 17 people joined today, sir. Some of their names are not visible, so
not today.
Today, it's I think 18 people joined today.
Yes,
altogether.
Some of the names are not visible.
So
Sumita has joined. Anima Khartoum has joined, and obviously Niti has joined. Pravir Das has joined, and if I can see a few names, but not all the names.
Sir, my students have joined. Rajilakshmi, Aradhana, Akanksha, they all have joined. They are here. And Siddiq Da has also joined. Siddiq Dada is here as well.
And what about Ashutosh?
He hasn't joined, sir.
Aradhana has joined. Yes, I can see.
Rajilakshmi and Akanksha.
I'm stopping the recording and we can continue, but since the discussion.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.